Biblical Hebrew is a rich and dynamic language, far richer than our modern English or even the Greek of the New Testament. And it's important to remember that Hebrew is the language that God used to deliver his revelation to humanity. So Hebrew words often have a broad range of meaning. And on the surface, this broad range may seem random or disconnected, but when we look deeper into these words and how they're connected, we often find that they express something profound about God or his creation, or even about our own journey as spiritual beings. Now, all Hebrew words are derived from a verb. Hebrew is action-oriented. From that root verb with minor spelling changes, you can get a number of other words. And again, in English they may seem disconnected, but they actually share in that similar root. So there's a word in Hebrew, it's Dabar. And Dabar is a verb, it means to speak. From this verb we also get a noun, Dabar, and that means word or speech. So in Hebrew, the 10 Commandments are actually called the 10 words, the Debarim, which is why in the Greek we refer to them as the Decalogue, the 10 words. So God Dabars, he speaks his Dabar word. And if you continue on with some of the other variants, we find something really cool. They all have an association with communication. So for instance, Dabar as a noun is an oracle. An oracle, of course, is a word from God. And this same word, Dabar, is also used for the Holy of Holies, that sacred place in the tabernacle where the Israelites hear God speak. Now, the word I want to look at today is Midbar. And Midbar is the word used in the Old Testament for desert or wilderness. God took the Israelites out of Egypt and into the Midbar. So what is Midbar? How can we understand desert or wilderness? Well, desert or wilderness is the place where everything is stripped away from us. While the Israelites were in Egypt, they had plenty of food and water and shelter. And yet, paradoxically, they were slaves. Now, the desert, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. There is no food, no water, no shelter. It's difficult to survive in the desert. Everything in life that's provided for you, support and comfort, has been stripped away. So the wilderness, then, is a place of total reliance on God. And we need a shepherd. We're like sheep in the desert. If we don't have a shepherd, it's certain death. So it's in the wilderness, the Midbar, that we learn to hear God speak, Dabar. They're connected. Now, have you been there? Have you found yourself in the metaphorical desert of life? Have you been through a time in life where somebody or something close to you that provided support and comfort was suddenly stripped away? The loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, a crumbling marriage, an incurable sickness. Anything that you knew to be solid in life that's suddenly taken away. And it's in these desert moments that we have to lean the most heavily on God. God is all we have left. And it's in these desert moments when inside the deep pain of loss or suffering that we can hear God speak the clearest. Why does God take the Israelites out of Egypt and into the wilderness? Why not go directly to the promised land, the land flowing with milk and honey? It's because the Israelites need to learn to hear God's voice first. They need to be stripped of the comforts. They need to learn to place all of their reliance on God, to hear his voice. So wilderness, Midbar, as a metaphor for life, is the place we hear God speak. Now, the Bible also describes what we would call spiritual disciplines. And spiritual disciplines are practices we can use to help us hear God's voice. And many of the things we do in these spiritual practices purposely take ourselves into the desert, into the Midbar. We strip something away so that you can hear God more clearly. Voluntary fasting, the stripping away of food. Tithing or charity is the stripping away of your resources Solitude, learning to be alone with your thoughts, stripping away all of the distractions in life. Before we're thrust into the wilderness against our will, we should be practicing those disciplines so that we learn to hear and trust God's voice. So wilderness, Midbar, deriving from the Hebrew verb to speak, Dabar, is a metaphor for our walk with God, is the place where we hear God speak. It's the place where we learn to rely upon God for all of our needs, where we truly make God our shepherd.